So this is Connie Reguli, and I'm here with Crista. We are into part 3 of her life. I hope you've had the opportunity to watch the first 2 parts, but if you haven't, I'm going to do a quick summary for you that she was adopted as a baby into a home of a couple where she was then sexually assaulted for 10 years between the ages of 3 and 13 by her father, and her mother was like, see no evil, hear no evil, tell no evil, and did never disclosed it or never reported him, even when Crista was 7 years old, and she had drawn a very graphic picture that would have been a telltale sign that there was sexual abuse going on, that the mother still did nothing. So this is, and her father at the time, he was from ages 35 to 45. So we're dealing with a man who should know better. He had a job. They had a very good upper middle class life in Wilson County, lived on the lake. And when she had a baby sister who then turned 3, and she knew that it was 3 when Crista was being, the sexual abuse started. And so Crista started acting out, trying to protect her sister, and finally disclosed the sexual abuse. And then nothing happened. So then, we have talked about how Crista finishes her high school, does some counseling, is pregnant with her child at, would you say 37?
Yes, ma'am.
At 37, has her baby, moves back with her family for a short period of time a couple different times, to try to just gain some stability as a young single mom, and then her child is taken. So on allegations that she was sexually abused by her mother. The very same thing, almost identical allegations to what Crista has disclosed about herself. And now we are up to the criminal trial. So your criminal trial was in February of 2017.
My criminal trial was November of 2017.
November of 17.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so November of 2017, and you've been incarcerated with no bond for a year.
That's correct.
Okay, so you have a trial. The DA is calls Doris and your mom, calls Rebecca, your sister, and calls a counselor, right? And that's it? And they played the video.
They played the video of my daughter from CPS. Yes, ma'am.
And, did the DA try to pretend that there were disclosures of sexual abuse in the video?
Actually, it was my attorney that was the one that started the video. So,
but the state would have presented their case first. So, are you sure that was it the state who showed the video, or did your attorney show the video?
That's a good question. You know what? I'm not really sure.
Okay, so probably he played it.
Okay.
So it sounds like the state called your mom and your sister and this counselor, and the counselor did not make disclosures of abuse. Those records are under seal. Those were your daughter's counselor. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And then Rebecca and your mom says that they saw it.
I did it in front of them, yeah.
And so your attorney plays a video and put your daughter on the stand. Did your daughter disclose any sexual abuse?
No, ma'am.
And she would have been, 8 by this time?
8 years old.
8 years old. So it goes to the jury. Wow, this is so crazy. This is so crazy. I hate the way they do this. I could tell so many stories about them, about what cases they pick and choose to prosecute. But so in November, and we have that here, in November of 2017, November the 8th, 2017.
Never forget it.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Not guilty, not guilty, not guilty, not guilty. So you get out of jail, right?
I do.
But things have not really, from while you were in jail, other things happened, right?
Yes.
So the other thing that happened is the juvenile court proceeded on the adjudicatory hearing on DCS's petition.
That's correct.
You're incarcerated. You can't work on your case. You had retained an attorney. Did that attorney ultimately leave? And what happened in just kind of short story? What happened with your attorneys in the juvenile court case?
Yes, he just said that I had hired him for criminal and that he was not going to
Okay.
represent me on
Okay, so the attorney that you hired after your child was taken, because you were arrested within 30 days after that. So he said, I'm just doing the criminal.
Yes, ma'am.
Right?
Right.
So they end up setting a hearing in February of 2017 in front of Judge Barry Tatum.
Yes.
And I've had my own experience with Judge Barry Tatum and how he wants to control things in his courtroom that are, I think, a little not in order. But it says in here that you were present. Now, were you in shackles?
Yes.
And an orange jumpsuit?
Yes, ma'am.
So you're taken to the courtroom in shackles and an orange jumpsuit, and then Rebecca and her husband were there, and they were represented by an attorney. Jesse Gentry was the Assistant General Counsel for the Department of Children's Services. And then, wait a minute, Dia Vaughn Lawson was the DCS worker. Greg Collins was the CPS worker. And the guardian ad litem, Candace Pewitt, were all there.
Yes, ma'am.
And so you didn't have an attorney there.
I did not.
And did you, it says here that you had fired your attorney at the last hearing. So when did you have a hearing? This is February 2017. When did you have a hearing before that?
1 week.
1 week before.
Yes, ma'am.
So they brought you in actually to have the trial that day though, right? On that week before or no?
No, ma'am. I actually had met with the court-appointed attorney, and he had basically asked me to plead guilty to the case, or to the false allegation, and I told him that I would not, and that if that's what he wanted me to do, then I told him that, I did not need him present. So I, wrote a letter to Judge Barry Tatum and asked him if I could get another attorney because this one wasn't going to work. And so that's when I went in the week before, and Judge Tatum had said, either you find you another attorney or you will not be represented by an attorney. Of course, I'm in, my little orange jumpsuit and can't call out or anything like that. So he said, you understand that, you understand that you can, either get another attorney.
So he told you to go find an attorney. You're in jail, you're incarcerated, and you have a week to do it.
Right.
And no money, of course, obviously.
I never had money while I was in there.
My gosh. So you go to court on February the 17th, and they have some kind of a little trial, right? They does anybody testify?
Greg Collins and the lady from Lantern Lane. And that's it.
The counselor.
Yes,
Greg
ma'am.
Collins. And Greg Collins, who, of course, he's not a witness to anything, right? Did he testify that your daughter had disclosed sexual abuse?
Yes, ma'am.
He did.
He did.
Do you have that transcript?
No, ma'am, I don't. But
Wow.
What's amazing to me is that they sure do have my audio of me. There's not one thing in there of an hour of me except saying what is going on here, but they surely turned off that audio to go out on the front porch when my daughter supposedly said that.
So they audioed you at the house in that July 1st day in 2016 when this started. Wow. But they didn't audio tape her.
Right. Same day.
Now, did Judge Tatum watch the video of your daughter, the forensic video?
I'm not sure.
Well, the day you were there.
They didn't play it.
So they didn't play the forensic interview of your daughter.
No, ma'am.
And the Lantern Lane counselor, she didn't have any evidence that your child had disclosed abuse, right?
No, ma'am.
And then,
I
Greg.
don't think so. I'm sorry.
Okay, I understand. And that would have been, okay, well, we'll leave that. But then Greg Collins was a CPS, and he talked about what he said that your daughter told him that she was sexually abused by you, basically. Okay.
Only person.
And so it took, an hour maybe for this hearing? maybe.
Probably not even that.
Not even an hour. All right, so then the judge enters this order. You're in court February the 21st, 2017. This order comes out about 2 weeks later on March the 6th, and it's called an adjudicatory order. I'm not going to show you this because it is a juvenile court record. But it does say that there is, it says here that the mother fired her attorney at the last hearing and was advised that if she did not hire another attorney, she would not be provided with another court-appointed attorney due to the fact that she had previously had 2 other attorneys that were on her case. The mother has not hired an attorney and proceeded at this hearing pro se. So, first of all, I'm just going to say that's horrible, okay? A parent does not have an attorney and they're facing the loss of a constitutional right. They should at least provide some type of an armchair attorney, some type of a support attorney. If the parent wants to proceed to trial, they have a right to proceed to trial. Then it says that reasonable efforts were made to prevent the removal of the child. Wait,
Not true.
nada.
No.
Nada. And then it just says that all it says is that the child is dependent, neglected, and a victim of severe abuse as perpetrated by her mother having committed sexual abuse. So there's not, that's the only finding of fact, is just based upon Greg's testimony then. So they didn't call Doris or Rebecca. Wow, interesting. All right, so that happens while you're incarcerated, and then you were able to get an attorney to file a notice of appeal.
No, that was me that filed it.
Oh, you did this. Okay, so there's a form. You can kind of see this. There's a form called a notice of appeal that you then appealed from juvenile court to circuit court, and that did get filed in juvenile court on March the 13th, 2017. And how did you file this?
I wrote a letter from jail in my own handwriting and said
Well, who printed this form for you?
the jail. I mean I guess the clerk.
Oh, so you wrote a letter to the clerk and said you wanted to appeal, and she mailed you this form?
Yes,
you think?
ma'am.
Okay.
Or I just wrote a letter to Judge Tatum, but they, in my own handwriting, but somehow or another.
And you said you wanted to appeal?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, so they mailed you this form?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I mean, that's at least the one decent thing they do.
Right.
Good Lord. Well, however, that fell on its face as well.
Yeah.
All right, so that is in 2017. So again, to get this timeline straight, your child is removed in July of 2016. You are arrested on, I'm sorry, hold on here. You are arrested in August 2016. You make bond. You missed a court date. They arrested you, put you in without bond. That is in November 2016.
Yes, ma'am.
So you have a pending dependency and neglect and a pending criminal case going at the same time.
Yes.
And they have the forensic interview in which there's no disclosures of sexual abuse, and she was what, 6 at the time?
Yes, ma'am.
So I mean, this is a 6-year-old. I mean, 6 years old can talk about things. They can say things. Now, sometimes on an initial forensic interview, sometimes there are times where they're not really ready or they don't really understand the process. And I have seen this where then once maybe something happens again, or they go to some counseling, or they get somebody to help them kind of understand that process, then on their second interview, they are more likely to disclose. So so they didn't do a second interview of her though. Nobody followed up. Nobody did a second interview. They did some counseling with her. That was it. All right. So you have filed. So during your incarceration, they have this trial on you with no attorney. You file a notice of appeal. Your criminal trial then comes up in November of 2017, and you're not guilty.
Right.
So at that time, you're trying to go to circuit court, and the circuit court gets screwed up too. What happens there?
Well, gosh.
Well, so you're in jail until November. So you filed in March, you're in jail till November. So nothing has happened to November.
Yes, I was supposed to go to a couple of court hearings in circuit court, and the attorney that I had never put in for a transport.
Oh.
Yes, ma'am. So In a nutshell, I basically missed every court date because I was never told of one court date. All of my mail was being sent to Don and Doris Haynes in Mount Juliet. Not one time was I ever advised.
Because that was your last address.
But my address was on file in Wilson County in criminal court.
Your jail address?
No, ma'am. As soon as I got out of jail, I always kept them apprised in juvenile court, in general sessions, which it didn't matter.
Okay, but your last address when your daughter was taken was to Donna Doris's.
Yes, ma'am. But as soon as I got out of jail, I had to sign an affidavit because I owed court costs for being in criminal, court. So they knew every time that I moved, I called every court, every one of them, juvenile, criminal, even general sessions, and they always knew where I lived.
Wow.
But
All right, so you get out of jail in November 2017, and where do you go live?
I'm homeless.
So, I mean, where do you live? Where do you sleep?
Yeah, and under bridges when it rained, and out in fields, and all of my stuff that I had put in storage was sold, and my car was gone, and everything.
So not guilty, a year in jail, and you have nothing. Nothing. So then they screw up not notifying you of court dates, and that gets dismissed. Are you okay? Okay. All right, so then at some point though, you say to yourself, I'm mad. At some point you're able to get mad, angry, because listen, when you were sitting in jail for a year, I'm sure there had to be thoughts in your mind like, I could be here for 40 years.
Well, I was looking at 12 years. 12 years in prison.
I mean, I know a mom in jail for 40 years on false allegations. So, I mean, I know it can happen, right? I know that can happen. So during that process while you're in jail, I'm sure that is your most pervasive thought of, this could be the rest of my life. Well, my daughter's a child anyway. I mean, 12 years, she would have been 18, right?
Believe me, don't think that I didn't think about that all the time.
Did they do anything for you to have visits or phone calls or any type of contact with her while you were in jail?
I mean, that, when Judge Tatum signed off on that it says I shall never have contact with my daughter again.
Yeah, I don't know if it was in this one, but there was an order. Was it this one that had said that it was
second.
up to them, but he recommended that the mother shall have visitation with the child under such restrictions and at such times as determined by Rebecca and Warren in their discretion. However, the court finds it's not in the best interest of the child to have any contact with the mother due to the likelihood of emotional trauma and regression due to contact. Wow. The case is closed. Wow. Crazy. And here you've gone through all this personal abuse. Your father was never held accountable up to this point. And actually when authorities and when you did tell and people got involved, they were dismissive of it. It was like it didn't exist. And now all of a sudden so she was born when you were 37. So you were what, 42 when this happened?
Yes, I'm about 40, 43.
So you're 40 to 43 years old. You're in prison on a false allegation. You've been through tons of counseling about being the victim of this. And, honestly, I'm just going to say, girl, I'm surprised you're alive.
I'm alive for my daughter.
I'm surprised you're alive. All right, so at some point, though, you're out of jail and you decide you want to find out if there's any way to pursue Donald.
Yes, ma'am. When I finally got back on my feet as far as getting a car, and jobs aren't easy to find when you have the kind of stuff that I have on my background report, even though I was not convicted.
Well, exactly. You are not guilty, and it should be totally dismissed and expunged. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that, and I'm going to give you a copy of the law on that, because you need to go forward with that. I mean, they are supposed to dismiss and expunge everything about that, right? Totally gone. But anyway. So you decide at some point you are going to go see what you can do about Donald.
Yes, ma'am. So basically, for me, COVID was a blessing. I know it's not been for many people, but for me, it was. And
kind of slowed down the world.
Yes, ma'am. Slowed down everything, and finally, I was able to. No one would rent to me. When my background check came back. But anyway, in June of 2020, I was able to, find a place to live and everything. And right before that, I just researched constantly, and I found something.
Where would you do that? Did you go to the library?
Oh, no, ma'am. I would just stay up. I mean, if I couldn't sleep at night, I was on the computer, research.
Mm-hmm.
And during the day, I had that time, off because, I was furloughed, from my job.
Right.
And I found, something online from a guy from Murfreesboro that actually, found a loophole in the law that from 1978 to 1989, aggravated rape of a child under 13 had no statute of limitations.
Wow.
So that was when the light bulb, came on.
So from what year? 79 to 89?
Yes,
Is that what you said?
Yes, ma'am.
Wow. Okay.
And the reason for that is because you could have gotten a person that, did that could have gotten life in prison.
Oh.
So I reached out to him, and he sent me the paperwork.
Mm-hmm.
And so I immediately went into went down to Wilson County, and I showed the law to them. And it just so happened that the prosecutor that had tried to prosecute me, for the case, the state prosecutor was there, and I didn't really want to tell him about this, but I allowed him to sit in, and the detective, and they told me they'd get around to it whenever they could, that they had a pretty heavy caseload, and that really made me mad. So it took me, I guess, 2 days or so, and I called the TBI, and the TBI sent someone out in like 3 days. And
So I have to ask this, what did you tell the TBI? Because I know whenever I've tried to contact the TBI, they're like, we will only open a case if we get a referral from a DA.
That's so they listened to me, and so my agent reached out to who used to be the DA in Wilson County. It's changed now, and because of the conflict of interest from my trial, my criminal trial.
Right.
They decided that it was a conflict of interest and that the TBI would be overseeing it.
Oh, okay. So you finally did get the DA at the time to do a referral to the TBI. So, but yes, you had to go. But the TBI gave you an interview.
They did
before that. That is amazing.
It
so,
is.
Did they agree with you that there was no statute of limitations on that?
The lady that the agent that I spoke with, was like, I've never heard of this. We have never heard of this. And I was like,
so they were shocked. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what did they do? Did they get to work on it?
Yes, ma'am. I mean, we tried to call Donald Haynes, and he said he was busy or whatever. But I just let her know. I said, I'm pretty sure. I mean, if you just go and ask him, he's probably going to tell you. And they don't tell you what they're going to do, beforehand.
Right.
But a couple weeks later, she gave me a call, and she said, we got the confession.
Wow. So he admitted it.
He admitted it.
So what year is this happening? 2020?
Yes, August 13th of 2020.
Wow. Yeah. So slowing down the world for the pandemic did do something right, didn't it?
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely.
But did she then try to go back and recreate what had happened in 1986 as far as the investigation is incurred?
Are you asking about like the
What
trying to figure out what happened
Mhm.
back in 1986?
Right, right.
Yes, ma'am. So she went back and tried to find any sort of paperwork, and that's when she discovered that there was a 4-page confession back in 1986 where Donald Haynes was actually read his Miranda rights and signed a 4-page confession, and he was never arrested.
Never arrested. That's so crazy. So hard to really pinpoint. I know I've looked at some of those records with you. It's so hard to pinpoint who the person is responsible for dropping the ball on that.
Right.
And now some of them are dead.
Right, but not all of them.
Not all of them. All right. So he gets indicted. Donald Haynes gets indicted, right?
On November the 10th of 2020.
And he is, I think I have that paper here. So then he decides he's a media release charged with sexual assault from 40 years ago. It's going to be impossible for you to see, but there is the media release that in 2020, he was arrested for a sexual assault from 40 years prior. Wow.
He had 6 indictments, though, of aggravated rape of a child under 13.
Wow. So then he gets arrested. I'm assuming he makes bond.
Mm-hmm.
And,
oh, no.
Yeah, I forgot to print it after you sent it to me. So, how does that go as far as, do they have a trial? What happens?
No, ma'am, it got slowed down, because of COVID, of course, and everything. But I think we had two different court dates where, again, things just kept, going, getting pushed out. And so the last, I believe it was in July of 2021, they were still trying to continue it. So I got up in front of the judge and just let the judge know that, every time that I had to come back in, and face, Donald and Doris Haynes, that I was feeling re-victimized and that I really didn't appreciate it. And, showed the victim's Bill of Rights and the right to a speedy trial, or, the right to an end, to this quickly. And luckily the judge, listened, and I didn't realize that we were trying to get to some sort of an agreement. So that's when, Dawn's attorney stood up and said, well, we're going to try to get to some sort of agreement, at the next court date. So they set the court date on August the 16th. And the judge said, if we don't have an agreement by August the 16th, we're going to, set it for trial for December.
Well, now, and part of that Bill of Rights, I mean, the DA is supposed to discuss with you what the plea agreements are, the plea negotiations are. Was the DA letting you know that?
Yes, ma'am. Believe it or not, Donald Haynes' attorney was the first to give us a plea agreement. And I was like, I don't think that they're in any position to be telling us what kind of plea agreement was. So I asked her, I said no, of course, and I told her the next day I would call her and let her know what my plea agreement would be. And so what he pled out to was what I had decided
you were okay with. All right, so what did he plead out to?
He pled out, I wanted it to be probatable because I didn't want him to go to prison.
How old is he now?
He's 79 years old.
Wow.
I wish I would have sent him to prison, to be honest. But anyway, he pled out to 2 counts of attempted aggravated sexual battery. What an irony that is. That's such irony. He's got 8 years probation, an ankle monitor, the sex offender list, and supposed to be restitution.
Restitution, yeah. So we'll talk about that. Okay, so he entered a plea, and actually they did, the news covered this plea.
Yes,
right?
ma'am. Yes.
And was that Fox 17? Was that Dennis Ferrier?
Dennis Ferrier, yes.
Great, yeah, Dennis is great. All right, so then they do the, then you have a restitution trial.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, we're in another 30 minutes.
Okay.
I think we'll be wrapping it up here on part 4. But this has taken you all the way up to finally getting a plea of guilty by the perpetrator. Thank you. We'll be right back.